right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday show. We have many, many names, but I'm not going to list them all. I'm just going to call it the Roundtable, because that's my favorite. I am not Cyphus. I, in fact, am kind friend Ursinity, or foe, I suppose, depending on your opinions. But I'm here hosting today because Cyphus is MIA. But in place of Cyphus, we have two regular people that you may or may not recognize that may or may not have had a show that you listened to yesterday. Mr. Flubb.
With two B's. You forgot my true title, my friend.
Well, you have many titles, and I don't want to indulge anybody.
That's right. You can only have the titles yourself, right?
Well, I mean, I don't have any titles, dude. I'm just Ursinity or Ursi.
Cyphus always says the favorite podcaster, and I'm always like,
That's not a title. Facts are not titles, right?
Okay.
Anyway, the other person I have here is the lovely, temptress Grand Wazoo.
Oh yeah, I'm a siren, baby. Don't fly too close to my song. I'll suck you in. Flubb's full name is actually Grand Marquis Conquistador de Delavere de Flubb with two B's, the Grand Master of all.
Boy,
it's actually a countship title.
I need to write that down for next time, I guess, because boy, I definitely can't match that one.
He has multiple of the same last name in his name because that line of his intersected with another different, non-related line of the same name.
All I'm getting from this is that like Flubb is the product of some kind of like Western European incest royalty thing, and I don't want to be privy to that information. I don't want the details. I just want to talk about Dota 2. So shall we?
Yeah, I'm definitely down to do that for a change.
All right. Well, you know, if we run short, we always do have the fallback of let's talk about Flubb's family history as a, you know, whatever kind of fantasy, Russian nesting doll of incest. He's the product.
God, man.
Anyway, Matryoshka doll. That's what it's called. It's Matryoshks.
I'm glad you know that.
There's a really good Hatsune Miku song called Matryoshka.
I always knew them just as nesting dolls, not the actual Russian name.
Yep, Matryoshka. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. I'm sorry, Russian fans. Anyway, today our conversations are going to be primarily about the wonderful thing called Team MMR and Party MMR, I suppose, as well. They're two separate things, but I, for one, put them pretty much the same. One is a little more relevant than the other, but both I have pretty strong opinions on. But I know Flubb is very excited to talk about this, and it's very, very relevant to, I think, anybody and everybody. Very few people that play Dota only play solo queue and don't play party. I'd say I know more people that play only party queue than play only solo queue. So
yeah, I would agree with that.
So Flubb, I know this was your idea, so you can bring it in. What is your interest in Team MMR specifically?
So I was playing this weekend after midterms and stuff. I just wanted to like have a break and like not think very much. And when I do that, I go to Overwatch, even though the game is like strategic for those of you who play that game and Dota 2 at the same time. It's a fun game. But it just doesn't require as much mental power for me as Dota does. So I got on there and I was playing it, and I like met a few cool people, grabbed all of us together and like played the rest of the day and gained like a ton of MMR. Over the weekend, I gained like the equivalent of, I think it was like 350 MMR. And that's a lot, right? It was basically over a 36-hour period. And, like, I don't understand. Whenever I look at that system, I was like, man, I was a lot better in this situation. And people could say, you know, like, my team carried me, but I didn't really get carried. I was just in a good situation where I was in a good environment, where I played in the right situation, and like my true abilities came out because I was playing in such a good environment and not even all the guys were like that good of guys. Like some of them were like trolls and stuff, but people who like actually listen to each other and are just like not complete and utter dicks that just live on the internet just to make your life hell. And be able to play that, I was like thinking about it after like the high of playing those games this weekend, and I was like, man, I wish Dota was like that sometimes. And I was like, man, Well, it's kind of never going to be that way because the society of it kind of says, okay, you just got carried there. You didn't earn your way.
To be clear real fast, Flubb, sorry to cut you off. I just want to just clarify real fast, just so I'm on the right page. You mean like in consistency, that if you just had that level of consistency, you would gain MMR consistently, like Overwatch in Dota 2?
Not even like consistency, just like the idea of like having consistency of like not assholes on your team, but having
one player have so much impact kind of thing.
Like, why does the environment need to be that we kick ass through these awful people? Like, in spite of these awful people, we gain MMR. Like, why is that the key? It's because it means a little bit more when you can do that. But in general, when you're playing in teams or you're playing at a high level of Dota involvement, you're never having that situation. You don't have the dickwads. Or if you do have the dickwads, they're going to be booted from your team pretty quickly. Because that's just not how it works. And, I mean, you could even, like, talk about, like, well, what's currently going on with, like, the whole scandal right now with, like, Puppy and EE and stuff. And yeah, that team existed for a while, but you can see like the cracks in the system and why that team failed to begin with, whether it's one person's fault or the other. And when I look at like why is solo MMR so important in Dota 2, it's because you pull your own self up by your bootstraps, but you're not. You're playing a team game where the whole focus is how well you work together as a team. And if you can't work well together as a team because a team doesn't exist or because you have to come in with these guys who refuse to work as a team, that's not skill. It takes a different type of skill. It's not Dota 2 skill. It's like team. It's like personality management skill.
It's the culture of the game, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it could very well be like Overwatch if people work together, but I mean, I hate to say it because it's a game I love, but I feel like in general, people on Overwatch are way less salty for a number of reasons than any people are in Dota. Dota has like the most toxic community of any game I think I've ever played because you're trapped in an hour-long game at some points with someone who you are forced to work with. And in so many other games, you can just say whatever and log out or ignore and just play your own game.
So just for clarification for any of us, I know I played Overwatch ranked last season. This season, I have not played any ranked. I've actually haven't played Overwatch in a while, and I've been avoiding Overwatch almost entirely because I just hate their ranked system so much, which apparently you really enjoy. So this is going to be a fun conversation. But just for clarification's sake, for any of us that are not abreast to their system, they don't have a separation between solo and party MMR, correct? They just have one MMR.
It's one MMR system, and it goes in like increments of 500. So like I think bronze is 500, like 0 to 500. Silver is 500 to 1,000, so on and so forth. Or something different, or it's like 1,000 is where bronze starts or something.
An average MMR in Overwatch, if I remember correctly, when they announced it, is like 2,700 or 25 to 2,750 or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So your immediate average MMR is already like, think about this from like, obviously Cypher isn't here, so we don't have the actual psychologist standpoint, but like psychologically, if average is 2,500. It would stand to reason that whatever their system is, it's going to be like something that makes you feel good about yourself already. Like it's very like cushy, right? Average, you would think would be silver, or at least in my mind, when I think of an average like medal for like a ranking system, I would think of silver. So, yeah. But average in Overwatch is like what, like platinum or something?
I think so.
I don't know.
Truly, I don't know what the system is for like what's medium, what's good. It's just like when you're looking at it from a standpoint of, that this is all together and whatever is good, whatever is bad. It doesn't really matter like where you fit into that puzzle piece. It's the system of like looking at your MMR and saying, is it good, and then looking back and saying it's good because of this reason. And when it's all separated, like in Dota, where it's all solo, party, and team, that's a good thing to have. But I guess what my point is for like Overwatch is that Overwatch should do that. It should have like the same thing, but it should have the same value for each for each MMR, for each skill rank or whatever you want to call it, because in general, it's wrong to have a system where it says, okay, this is the only MMR that matters, work towards this, when it's counterintuitive to the ideology that you would go into for like the highest level of play that you could ever achieve in a game.
Can I tell you my pie in the sky fix? That if they did it this way, I would just be ecstatic. And they kind of have done it, and this is what has led me to think about it. But just run leagues. Have a normal league where you get a normal assigned MMR and run it for a period of 3 or so months, like a season. And then you can have, a ladder list of whoever climbed the highest in the MMR, post them globally, etc. And then you can have a ranked league where you just have a ranked MMR assigned to party and normal, and you can, or not party and normal, I mean party and solo. And then you can just have one MMR for that. You know what I mean? Because it's already a mixed pool of ranked and ranked solo and ranked party that you're getting in every game. And that's one of the things that's my biggest complaint, to be honest, is you're playing with people who might just be dicking off and having that mentality for party, but you're in a solo game. And it's like, you not only do that have them having that gang up type mentality of, I got my buddies back, so fuck everybody else, but you also like, you don't come into the game on the same mental level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, that has long been my only real problem with the Dota system of ranked MMR is just, I hate that even though it is only 2 stacks and 2 stacks are not like the worst thing in the entire world, they still are a detriment and it still doesn't feel like true solo MMR if there are the occasional 2 stack. And I mean, people always bring this up in threads and such, but for every game that a 2 stack ruins your team, a 2 stack is ruining the enemy team that you're gaining MMR off of. So it equalizes in the long term.
I know it's a negativity bias when something bad happens to you in the game and all the players from X are just terrible because I got a couple, and I understand that. But just
I do agree though.
The integrity of the system feels weaker with that. And I understand there's reasons for that like being able to match 5 solo people at all times is just a near impossibility or something. But why not just have one MMR like Flubb is proposing they poured over, but do a normal type ladder for people who want to play a normal type atmosphere, and then just have a ranked atmosphere that can be complete competitive, but not so competitive that like it's like a permanent record, dude. I've played like inebriated, and I played in other ways, and like I don't know, it just sucks that I need to wait around for the next battle pass to reset it again. But I'm glad that option's available. I would just like to see it happen more often, and perhaps it will.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people thought, right? When they announced, or when they first did international rank, they specifically in the post, if you go back and read it, they say seasons, which many people, myself included, thought meant every single major was going to have with their battle pass a new
but not
version.
This one, apparently.
Yeah, not this one for sure. Although there were some random glitches where people were able to queue for international ranks, so then maybe that, speculation, relatively baseless speculation, but maybe that means they were thinking about it and then decided not to. Maybe they're just going to do like 2 resets a year or something like that. We don't know right now, obviously. But
do leagues and just let people port that over. Still keep the same queues, but I'd like to see like different game types and stuff like that. I'd like to see like when they were doing all random for a while there, or a random draft. Sorry, not all random. That was fun. I remember having fun in ranked again. Because it was like, okay, these heroes are just gone, and now we can actually try to corner the pool a little bit and have a game of Dota. Like, that random element really drives with me. I love roguelikes. I love the random element in Dota, but I hate randoming. You know what I mean? I just love that every game's different. And so, like, to put parameters on that is really cool for me.
Yeah,
but,
Flubb, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I have a really big point about this because, like, I hate random draft with a passion. Like, I cannot stand that particular game type. But the only reason why I can't stand that particular game type is because whenever I did solo queues, no one would ever pick the thing that was like unopposed, like the thing that had the counters to it. Were just not available in the pool, and it was like so obvious, and I would be the one that's picking 4th, and every time I'd be like, hey, someone's got to pick up this, and they're like, well, I don't play that, and I'm like, well, pick it for me, and they're like, no, I'm gonna pick freaking Skeleton King when there's Lion and Anti-Mage.
So this was a while ago, Skeleton King, huh?
Or yeah, I always call him Skeleton Kid, but yeah.
But you could have picked that.
Right, right. But like the thing is, like I couldn't have picked at that time because the system I couldn't pick. When RD was available, I couldn't have picked at that time.
That's not how random draft works. Anybody can pick. At any point, it's just, you need to pick first. Also, there's actually a glitch, an abusable thing in random draft for any of you that want to be privy to this information. I don't think they've fixed it yet. If you and your teammate click at the exact same time, you can actually pick 2 heroes per phase. And then just skips a turn.
That was when ranked, though. Like when it was in
ranked and regular. In ranked, it works just like all pick, where it goes, your team has a chance to pick, their team has a chance to pick, your team has a chance to pick.
Right,
doesn't go,
right.
It's that was player specific.
That was when they took it away from being ranked. When it wasn't ranked, it was like now that it's an unranked, which I never play unranked. The system is fine, and the way that it's set up is fine. And then before when they
that's
swapped
how it is
it
in
out,
ranked.
Random draft is in ranked.
Random draft is in ranked. You can go queue for random draft right now. I actually love. I shouldn't say I don't play random draft ranked for a similar reason to you. I'm just want to clarify this that. It is not like blue picks and then teal picks and then purple picks and then yellow. It is, anybody on the Radiant can pick and then anybody on the Dire can pick or vice versa, depending on who gets first.
But if he picks up an early, safe pick, is what he's saying? Like if he picks up a Wyvern or something, just to have the general support pick, and then they pick up, say, something that's really, really weak to the Skelly King, and then he comes back and he's like, it would be a great time to pick that Skelly King, and it just doesn't happen.
Yeah,
then they pick up a PA or some shit that's weak to it, I think that's what you're trying to say, right, Flo?
No, I mean, the core argument here, and this is the only reason I'm taking over you, Flo, because I have the exact same argument that I was about to make, is that, like, in random draft and in all random and in single draft, and the reason why I don't play any of these modes in ranked, is because you can get a game where it's like, all right, we're playing random draft, and it just so happens that Morphling is in the pool, and none of the heroes that deal with Morphling are in the pool. So one team first picks Morphling, the other team has no chance to counter him, and then the other team just loses because it's like, all right, well, we have no ability to counter a hero that has specific counters. Or like Meepo is maybe the most extreme example, right? When we think of Meepo, we think, all right, the enemy team is a Meepo, we're going to counter. We're going to pick Wyvern, we're going to pick Earthshaker, we're going to pick Ember Spirit, we're going to pick stuff like that. And in random draft, sometimes you just get screwed. And it's like, all right, well, they have Meepo, and every single other hero in this pool is single target damage. So we just lost because they first picked Meepo. Or, they picked OD, and Nyx isn't in the pool, and other stuff like that, right?
But you can get creative and there's a lot of counters to like every hero in the game. It's also like laning counters, in my opinion, can happen. Like last night, we played a game as me playing mid Ursa versus a Meepo, and it's really strong to have mid Ursa versus a Meepo because you just keep him contested in lane, and you don't have that situation of him getting out of control because he has to leave lane and then he has to go into the jungle, and then you have your supports rotate and things like that. There's certain situations where yes, certain heroes have like specific counters, and it is definitely a possibility where you won't have that, and that's one of my biggest problems. But I would say that my biggest problem with those games is that I queue, and I have to queue in it in solo queue, and then there's no actual teamwork available to be able to either, if there is a one counter pick available, which is the thing that most likely happens, there's not often that a no counter picks come up, but there usually is one counter pick that comes up, and there's like no one that knows how to play the hero or refuses to play the hero. And I feel like if you like had a team of people and you knew going into it, like, okay, this guy is I have my friend who plays like all the heroes in the game, and then I play like pretty much every carry, so like we can like do this type of situation. That's what those games are built for, is the people who have the bigger pools and can do like wackier things, which I love, but it doesn't ever work out because you're doing it in a solo queue situation.
Okay, so I think to rather than going back to comparing to Overwatch, I think we should each of us summarize our opinions in like in the quickest version possible of the relative values of solo and party MMR And I'm not going to ignore Team MMR for now because like very few people play Team MMR. But we could talk about that later, I suppose.
Yeah.
I'll go first, I suppose. I think that Party MMR is relatively worthless, and I could care less about it unless it's like drastically different. This is also colored by my experience in mid 4K Party MMR over the last like 6 months or whatever, where it is completely arbitrary because you have 7K players and 6K players that have 4K Party MMR, and games are fundamentally unfair. And I imagine you see this, or I mean, in my experience, having had when I've been in like low 3K and stuff, Party MMR, similar experiences where, you know, you can have 10 people with 3K Party MMR, but their real MMRs, you know, they could all very well be 4K or whatever. Party MMR, I find, is pretty much arbitrary. Solo MMR, I value, and that's about it, because it is the only quote-unquote fair playing field. Yes, there are abusable ways to change your MMR, to inflate or whatever. And yes, you do have unlucky times where you'll go on losing streaks or winning streaks or whatever that will vary the MMR. But in general, I find solo MMR to be the only valuable statistic in Dota when it comes to gauging skill. And by no means am I saying that is an absolute gauge of skill, but if I'm looking at somebody that I've never played with before, I would, and you were going to give me one statistic, I would say, what is their what is their solo MMR? I don't want to know their party MMR. I don't want to know their team MMR. I don't want to know their games played. I don't want to know how many commands they have or when they started playing. I just want you to tell me, all right, they're like 2750. It's like, okay. So that's me. Wazoo, you can go next. What is your opinion on solo versus party MMR?
I feel like I know, I guess from my experience, that the party MMR seems to take off from around the point your skill level is at when you calibrate. It feels like that's pretty good. I know my numbers have stayed pretty close together, but I mean, I wouldn't say that it's a great measurement because it's very easy to inflate. I know that just from playing with people who are like low 1Ks or something, because if you're the ceiling, you know, you have a bunch of people below you, and it's pretty much who has the players that are the least bad at that point. And that's not something that can be good. Is it a good tool to, I guess, play with friends and feel like you're building something when you play with those friends and can build those relationships like, hey, dude, we've grinded 100 MMR out together, you know? It's cool that it's there. I don't think it's intended to be a very serious gauge of skill or anything, and it's certainly not taken that way in the game. So yeah, I don't know. I enjoy it more these days than I do solo, because my solo games are just incredibly toxic, and so it's nice to be able to control the amount of toxicity you let in if you have a bunch of buddies you want to just unwind and play with, not take it too seriously, and kind of just try out things with people that are agreeable.
Makes sense. Flubb, how about you?
I think that as the system stands right now, having it separated into 3 different MMRs makes it so that that solo is the only one that matters. But I think that system is wrong and that it needs to be changed. I think that if we had a system that was more unified and went along with that aspect, I would care more about someone's total MMR, about like the party MMR situation, because yes, MMR is the way that you tell someone is good or not. It's win percentage, right? And you're always looking at someone's win percentage when you're considering the game, because whenever you look at KDA, like that doesn't necessarily mean anything if they're a support player. It doesn't mean certain things if your off lane if he gets like decent farm, that means he's probably a really good off lane, because if you can't get amazing farm in the off lane. It's not really possible if you're going up against supports that actually do something. Mm-hmm. So, like, in that scenario, I do agree with you, but I feel like that there's something that's missing in Dota that has possibilities elsewhere. Like, for instance, for Overwatch. And I feel like if we like move towards that direction, it would be better as a whole, because I, as a person, would rather have the guy who's good at working at a team as a team player than that just complete asshole that just like demands everything and is yelling at you the entire game. Because I'm gonna play worse, other people are gonna play worse. And muting them is an option, and it's something that is a very useful tool in the game whenever someone's like that. But you're muting communication, which I don't know how many times I've heard on every single one of our shows that people are like, communication is the key for working out in Dota. Well, if it's communication is the key, and we're muting each other, and we're ignoring each other, and we're pissing each other off, and just letting this get out of hand, then that doesn't really demonstrate anything. It's like a tool of like who could ignore the asshole the best and still play their game. And it's like I feel like I'm way better than a lot of times than what happens in games because someone just shits on me and I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna have to mute you, and then that like kind of sticks with you the entire game because you like made a screw up. Whereas if you were playing with your buddies, yeah, that screw up is a problem and it might stick with you for a little bit, but they'll be like, oh, it's all right, man. We're doing this, so we're good. And then I'll turn around and I'll actually make a big contribution to the game. So I feel like it's not the way to go right now, but it should be.
Okay, so here's the reason why I hate the Overwatch system, and why I have not played the current one and stopped playing the other one, or the old one previous to when they made minor alterations in the current season, because they do a season thing.
Right.
Although your new season MMR is predicated on your old season MMR,
Right.
or at least as is now. My issue with this, and a very simple question, I feel like whenever people approach or suggest new MMR systems, like there was a big Reddit thread the other day, is in a system like the Overwatch one, if you are a solo queue player, you are significantly disadvantaged, and you are actively you benefit from playing with a 5-stack, and you suffer for playing solo, because if the MMRs are the same, you want to be putting yourself in the best situation, right? If the solo MMR and the party MMR are tied together, and you're gaining into your pool of MMR, whether it's a plus 25 in Dota or a plus whatever in Overwatch, you are gaining just because you won, regardless of the situation, regardless of your teammates. You are only going to want to play, and if you are playing with a stack, right? If my MMRs were tied together, for instance, like to use our race to 5K as a perfect example, Prad and I both raced to 5K. We were very close. I beat him by like 30 minutes, and it was a very fun time. I feel like I need to bring that in just for the fun of it. But using the Overwatch system.
Congratulations here on the air. Seriously.
I appreciate it.
That's a huge achievement.
I was just thinking, I'm happy about it. But I was just thinking that this is the first show I'm on for the week that I am 5K. And I stopped playing ranked specifically so that it could be brought up on shows and it wouldn't be like, well, actually he's 49.88 now. And then I just get like crap talk for the rest of my life.
You can share some of that MMR. Just cut off 1K or something and throw it this way. Dude.
Yeah. But anyway, during this race, using that as the example, if our MMRs were tied together, if this was just get to 5K MMR, not 5K solo, and in this, non-existent world where Dota MMRs are tied together, I would only be playing in 5 stacks with people that I'm confident in, that I know that I'm going to say, all right, I can just do this, and I'm putting myself in absolutely ideal conditions. I would never in my right mind play solo queue in any of these worlds. And I like playing solo queue. I find it relaxing, even when I play with the scum of the earth that you run into. I like solo queue. Like I play solo queue unranked all the time, and it's just fun. It's a good experience. So that's why I hate the Overwatch system. You are disadvantaged for wanting to play alone, and you are heavily advantaged by playing in a stack. And we saw this with Overwatch in Season 1. I've not been paying attention to Season 2, obviously. But in Season 1, many like random streamers and stuff were getting to be like top tier, quote unquote, players, despite being bad because they just played with like their friends that are really, really good, and they would get carried up to MMR. And this is my core argument against it, right? Is that I don't want an MMR system that actively disadvantages one group of people, and especially in team games, right? So that is my counterpoint, right? Is I like to play solo, and I don't want a system that is going to say, oh, you're playing solo? Well, it doesn't matter, so you're screwed. And this is also the core of the argument against duo queues being in solo ranked, right? It's because either they don't take it seriously, or they do take it seriously and they just stomp you because their MMRs are completely different or whatever. But anyway.
Yeah,
So
and I hear you. Wazoo, if you wanted to jump in here, that's fine, but I kind of
no,
have a
go ahead.
counter argument here.
I was going to say this is an argument against you specifically, Flubb. So
So,
Yeah, I mean, that's what I kind of figured. You can go ahead and.
so when I see that dilemma that you're talking about, I guess what I would have to say is, yes, it disadvantages the people who have trouble getting together as a team, and yes, that is bad for them. But this is a team game; like it's designed for that. I'm not jumping onto Call of Duty and playing a game that is basically designed so that I can carry the team at no problems of the situation. Like Dota, whether people argue it or not, is a game that everyone has to be involved in and everyone has to be a good player to do something with. If you have the lesser player, then you're in a worse advantage, and people gang up on that situation and they take advantage of that worse player. So you can get up in a higher MMR by having people like raise you, but you're still playing. You'll still get to a point where you're gonna get lowered back down, or if you play with those guys, and specifically those guys, and they want to have you as a handicap, then they should have you as a handicap. Or if you're going into these into the situation, looking at it as, you don't want to disparage someone who can't have who can't like make people play with them, that they just get on and they just want to play like games by themselves. I totally understand that. But the thing is like, if you're going into this game and you have a situation where you're going to go into a game and you're not going to talk to anyone, you're not going to communicate, or you're there because you're not there to make friends, you're there to like troll the situation, to just be a giant dick, then then you should suffer that consequence of being a giant dick. Like,
It's interesting because in Overwatch, one player doesn't have as much of an impact. Like you can feed even with one guy a ton, and it's like a guy gets an ult up earlier and then can maybe go into a more advantageous situation. But in Dota 2, if a guy doesn't like me for whatever reason, he's able in my solo games to just throw it. And it makes getting out of the trench kind of hard because you'll win one through a lot of hard work, and the next game you'll lose just because of a feeder. Mm-hmm. And then you'll win one because of hard work, and then you'll lose. It's not every game's a feeder, but it's like every game has a troll in it, it feels like, at a certain point. And it's not just at my MMR. That would be a terrible negativity bias. But when half your games that you lose are due to people trolling or being feeders, like I think that's a problem. And the system, the MMR system, and giving so much power in the solo for that makes people feel like they control more effectively, I guess, by like tanking you on purpose or something. Like something me and Flubb have discussed before. But continue on, Flubb.
well, that's my point, is that like I feel like the only people that are getting out of the situation are trollers, and even them, I would even argue they're not even losing in this situation, if you want to say that, because every troller that I've ever met has usually had a couple friends that troll with them. So like everyone who ever plays video games, like it's not what it used to be. People get on, very antisocial people get on to play games, and they have hundreds of friends online. Or people who are very social have a few, but they still like talk to those people and they still play. And if you're playing on a team game, if you're gonna go play basketball right now and you're gonna like talk about how good you are, if you go and play a pickup game of basketball, it's like, yeah, that guy's good at certain things, but you're gonna want to go play with your friends, or you're gonna go want to play with a team in that situation, because that's where like true basketball comes in, like working together as a team, playing the game correctly. Like, yeah, you could argue that it's different in like the pro level, and that's like what Dota has over that particular game. Like it has it in spades, where everyone has to be good, and we should bring up the idea that it's important to have a good background, or to have people to play with if you're going to go down that path, instead of valuing these people who, like Wazoo just said, have control over the system and just like shit on you constantly. Like everyone who's listened to this podcast or is a part of this podcast right now knows for a fact that there's games where you did nothing wrong and people just want you to lose, because you deserve to lose. You don't deserve to be here.
And this
You
isn't
don't
a
deserve
projection.
that.
Let's be clear. It's not like I think he wants me to lose. He's feeding. Like people straight up tell me, like I'm gonna tank your MMR. I'm gonna make your KD shit. Like is what I got told the other day. And I was like, okay. It's just so strange that like if one guy doesn't like one other person on the team and they want to be vindictive, you're capable of lowering the integrity of that solo MMR, and that's why it's valuable, right, Ursi? Because it is hard to get.
Yeah.
Party MMR, it's something you can inflate. Solo MMR, it's very rare. It's hard to get, it's hard to maintain, and it's hard to, when you're playing in a bad state of mind, win, really. It's a lot of a mental game.
Yeah. So solo MMR, the core argument for solo MMR right here, and this is partially messed up because there are duo queues that exist in solo MMR, but solo MMR, everybody's on an even playing field. So solo MMR, you will rise gradually if you are consistently better than your opponent. So yes, you will get those trolls, but the classic thing that people always bring up is on your team, assuming you are always playing well, or at the very least not ever a trolling, insert random expletive here, you will win because the enemy team has 5 potential chances for there to be some idiot that's going to feed couriers or whatever. Whereas on your team, there's only 4 chances, right? So you have whatever that maths out to be, a 10% less chance, or 20%, whatever, less chance of having a troll on your team, right? So that's that. There are some arguments against Dota's system because it takes so long to climb MMR, but that is a whole nother topic, I suppose. The thing, all right, so in Dota, using our system, and then we can compare this to Overwatch. First I'll bring up Overwatch, right? So using that example of earlier, if we saw in season 1, I imagine this is still happening in season 2, streamers would party up with sometimes pro players, other times just very good players, and they would inflate their MMR. And as Flubb was saying, Flubb posited that this player would be acting as an anchor for the people's, for like their pro players or what have you, the very good players, right? So they would not climb to their potential. But that's assuming that they have to play together all the time. It is not true, right? If the player can get up to whatever MMR, let's say, I forget, in first season it went up to 100, so let's say they can get up to 80 because they got carried by a bunch of their friends that are pro players or whatever. Then the pro players can say, all right, we're going to start losing games because you suck. So they can leave, Joe Schmo at 80, pick up one of their actual good friends, and then go and continue to climb. And that friend that sucks, that's at 80, remains at 80, right? It doesn't degrade over time, at least as far as I remember.
It does. It does actually degrade. If you lose, if you get on losing streaks, you lose bigger chunks.
Yeah, but I mean, that person could just not play that. But regardless.
But then they're out of ranked for a while.
Okay.
Like, then they have to do unranked, which that doesn't hurt anyone.
Okay. Well, and it does hurt. Isn't there there's a hidden MMR in Overwatch as well? Yeah. But regardless, the core of the thing, right, is that they can just get boosted up, and then sure, they may fall down, but then they're just going to ruin people's games over the course of however many dozens or hundreds potentially, if it's like the Dota system that's slower games. In Dota, using this example, and this is one of the big things that I could tell you I've done before, not intentionally because I don't really care about party MMR, but I could easily, and Flubb, you could easily do this too, and Wazoo even could do this easily. You find somebody that is significantly lower than you party up with them, and you can just climb MMR like crazy if you just pick mids and just abuse. So like right now, I don't know my exact party MMR, but it's like 4308 or something like that. I forget what it was after last team practice. But if mine's 4308, I could party with somebody that's party MMR is 2308, and I could just queue with them, duo queues, or we could, to make it even worse, we could do 5-man queues, and I could have 4 people that are 2308, and I'm 4308, and I could just dominate every single game, and it's a complete waste of time.
2308, you say?
Is that?
I might know a guy. I don't want to say any names, but you know him well. It's me. Do you want to boost me? It's me, your brother. Boost
That's
me,
funny.
Dude.
We could literally do this. We could make an entire video series where we could just mutually boost our MMRs because the system is that abusable and arbitrary.
I'll pay you
but
internet points.
But then the system should change. Like then you shouldn't be able to queue with people on party MMR when it's that big of a difference. And are you if you have someone that ruins your games, quote unquote, because they're up higher, you don't get your games ruined by the people who just want to ruin your games. You think it would happen way more than the assholes that you have to deal with constantly?
I almost never run into people that ruin my games in ranked. I run into these people occasionally, but I more often see them on the other team because I personally am never that person. Therefore, statistically speaking, I am going to gain MMR off of the fact that this dynamic exists within Dota 2. Like, I had one earlier today in unranked, but it was unranked, so it didn't really matter. And we still almost won the game, despite the guy that played Tinker, bought a Midas and Tranquil Boots, and then AFK'd in our jungle, invisible with the Shadow Amulet, for literally 45 minutes. And he didn't get an abandon.
If you keep playing versus, like, if you keep playing with a team, if you keep playing with your friends, then you're not hurting yourself out of it. They're hurting themselves. Like, you're not going to get queued up with someone if there's not a person to be queued with. So then if you don't want to have that scenario happen, then yeah, don't queue up for ranked when you don't have a full team. That's fine. Then go on to unranked. You do that anyway, or see, you go on to unranked pretty much a lot because you play a lot of Dota, and then you play like one game of ranked during the day because you don't want your emotions to fool with you, because there's feeders, there's just trolls, there's people in general that will put you on edge, and you don't want to deal with having a fresh new start. Wouldn't you rather be in a situation where you play a bunch of ranked games, play like 5 ranked games in a day, and then just like go like a week, and if you can't get the people together, then you just play unranked in that situation?
No. So okay, first of all, the reason I don't play a lot of ranked is not because of trolls or whatever. It's because I get like ladder anxiety, especially like around now where I'm like right at a precipice of 5K. That is why, and that's why like recently I've been better about it, but that's why I stopped playing StarCraft ranked, for instance. I made it to like gold or whatever, which is incredibly, low. I know that. But I just could not handle it. I was like, this is a 1v1 game. I stressed out way too much. That's just historically with games, I just get ladder anxiety. That's why I don't play a lot. I like to put myself in optimal position to do that. But at what it is meant to be, MMR is meant to be a rating which tells me how good somebody is. And somebody playing solo MMR, I know how that is within like a range of 500 points, let's say, representative of their skill level. Party MMR, there's so many unknown factors, and this includes these systems that are grouped up. To use that example from earlier, let's take an example of an Overwatch player that's at 80. If the system is such that it is abusable and it is mixed, I don't have any gauge of skill for that person that's at 80 MMR. They could be incredibly good, like other like true 80s, quote unquote. Excuse me, or they could have just gotten boosted, right? Same thing with like party MMR in Dota 2, right? If I see somebody that is 3K solo MMR, I know, give or take, about how good they're going to be. Excuse me. But if I see somebody that's 3K party MMR,
when you talk about this stuff, I know.
No, but if I see somebody at 3K party MMR, I'm like, okay, this means nothing to me. They could be 4K, they could be 2K. I know nothing from this. I know maybe a little bit of something, but this is just completely arbitrary to me. So I value MMR as a rough gauge of personal skill. And unless you don't have a solo MMR, like good friend of the show and community member Nameless Noob, he just never plays solo. He never even calibrated. He did like 3 of his matches and that's it or whatever. So the only thing I have to go off is his party MMR. And I know he personally doesn't like boost or anything, so I know it's a pretty decent gauge of skill. But if I see some random schmuck and he only has party MMR, this, like, it just means nothing, right? Because it's not a personal gauge of their skill. Yeah, it might be more fun, but if we're talking about MMR as actually being a valuable metric to gauge somebody's ability to play a game, whether it's Overwatch or Dota 2, solo MMR, where everybody's on a similar playing field, while it does have some problems, is the best system in general. And yes, like, you could add to that system with leagues or whatever, but I am a firm believer in, you should have separate MMRs, or party games should just not count at all, because there's just so many abusable factors, and it's not about your personal skill, it's about the skill of your friends matched with your skill.
And I think that party does exist for players like Nameless, because it's like, you can still get on if you only play Dota because you want to have that.
It's casual.
Yeah, it's supposed to be, whereas Overwatch, it's like they recognize that the game is very much just a team game, and so they've more oriented towards that casual mentality. You know what I mean? They weren't even going to have ranked for a while, if I remember correctly, or they just couldn't get the system off the ground.
Well, they waited.
They were like trying to understand how to do it even. So it's like Dota 2, it's like it's taken more of a solo mentality that you're serious if you can solo carry. And I mean, there's that's been around for a while in more than one iteration or aspect of Dota, the whole carry me mid mentality, I guess you could say. And that's very prevalent in that solo MMR. It's like Flubb said, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. I did this. This was not a team. This is me. And I think that thinking is, in one way, good, but it's also a double-edged sword because you get these guys that get into the game that are on your same skill level and you're all on the equal foot, and they think they're so much better than you. And so, like, when you can't get on an equal footing with somebody and be like, look, we got to do this and this to win, and they just shut the fuck up, noob, or whatever. Like, I had a guy just in the other day just pinging. Pinging when we got into the game, and so eventually someone was like, what? And he just says tango. It's like, okay, like, here, you can use your words. Like, you're not muted, obviously. And give him the tango. But from then on, it just got worse with, like, someone, I don't know, didn't buy a ward and he was just GG immediately, you know what I mean? And just spamming that in chat. And it's like, you can't win with people like that when they think that they do no wrong and you only do wrong. It's just, it's a very difficult problem.
Yeah. And I guess, like, yeah, you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And I see the value in what you're saying, Ursi. Like, I had that mentality for a really long time, but to state this again, Dota, it's been a work in progress this whole time. They didn't have ranked for like the first year, if not year and a half.
Well, they had ranked in Dota 1. We were both Dota 1 players. You do remember that, right? Every league had its own bot system.
You had to get into those leagues though. Like it wasn't an official league.
Well, even in like pub games, like all the bot leagues. Like leagues is the wrong term because there were actual like in-house leagues and things that went over whatever. But like even just the publicly hosted bot things would track your progress, and that was horribly abused because it was a mix of solo and party, right? So it would say, Ursinity has a 85% win rate because it's mixed because they couldn't obviously technologically differentiate between solo and party.
Right.
So you and I and the whole team of Hakuna Rana would just go farm MMR in public matches. That existed in Dota 1 and was a problem.
Right. Well, that's why pub matches didn't matter because...
Well, that's why MMR didn't matter.
Right. That's because they called them pubs. Like, that's why there's that mentality. It's just a pub. It doesn't matter. Like, the whole MMR system didn't matter in that play because you would be matching, like, people who weren't together versus people who were together. And, like, I still 100% agree that if that's the case, then yeah, it's not worth it. That doesn't mean anything. But I'm saying that, like, solo MMR and party MMR don't have to be something that's, like, completely honed out. And, yes, having a situation where someone's MMR is 2,000 less or even 1,000 less, maybe you shouldn't be able to queue with those people. And that would suck for certain situations. There's teams where, like, people wouldn't be able to queue with certain other people, and that could be a problem. But having that situation of what you're saying, people that are way outside the skill level, why not have like within 500 MMR?
Well, then our team wouldn't be able to play, for instance, because Fafnir's party MMR. Actually, no, Fafnir is actually a decent party MMR because he plays with other people than us. But like Sprunk, for instance, is like 47 and change, and at times we've been below like 42. So that's like even too little of an MMR difference. I think even 1,000 is too abusable, but that is neither here nor there, I suppose.
Should there be a competitive queue where you can, like, I know you can still play with your team and have team MMR and stuff like that, but is that system enough? Do you guys play ranked together, or when you play, what do you usually do?
Well, we've played Team MMR a few times because Team MMR doesn't subtract or add to your actual MMRs. It just creates a random Team MMR, but like Team MMR is even more arbitrary because, like, who cares? Like, literally nobody cares about it. Like, I know Flubb the other day, I know Fafnir tweeted out pictures of it or whatever. We played against a team that was, like, 2 and 3K players that had like 3,300 team MMR that somehow got matched up against us. And we stomped them and we gained 5 points and they lost nothing. That's how large the difference was. There was like a 1,500 point difference or something. And they lost nothing according to the scoreboard. Granted, that might have been because they were in like placement matches for team or whatever. But
you're kind of a purist when it comes to it.
I
like
just
both sides of the argument because I'm a lower skill player. When I get on, I'll never hit 5K, I'm pretty sure. I'll be surprised, honestly, if I hit 4K. I just am getting old, and I don't have the patience for the game as much, and I'm looking at hours invested, and I want to see more of a payoff, I guess. But do you think that maybe solo is taken too seriously? I saw this thing with StarCraft 2 where so many people like felt no desire whatsoever to play because they didn't feel like they could advance. They felt like they had topped out, and so they wanted like keeping Dota interesting. I mean, is MMR counterintuitive for that for some players? I mean, could you concede that?
I mean, there's folks like I was talking about my ladder anxiety before. Like that is definitely a serious thing that affects certain people when it comes to MMR. But as far as the system itself, when it comes to solo MMR, I just think of it in ranges, right? A 3K player and a 3,500 player are going to be generally similar, right? There may be differences, but a 3K player can go on a win streak over the course of a month, or they can just say, oh, Omni Knight has a 61% win rate. I'm going to play 200 games of Omni Knight, and they're going to naturally inflate their MMR. So that's why I think in like ranges, right? So if somebody's 3,200, I don't think they're any different from somebody that's 3,600, right? Because, while there may be minor differences, odds are they are relatively similar, right? And that's kind of my prerogative when it comes to MMR is not an absolute by any means, right? I just hit 5K, and I know I personally got better, but I don't think like I'm terribly different from somebody that's 4750 or at 5250, right? Like we're generally the same when it comes to MMR. So I don't think super rigidly, right? Like the thing you run into all the time is like if you're at any break point, like if you're at right around 4K, somebody that's like 4,052 MMR is gonna be like, yeah, these 3K trash, because they were the highest MMR in the game. When in actuality, they're like 3 losses away from being back in 3K. Like in a game the other day, I had a guy who was literally 5,009 MMR or something, and he's like, I just can't play with these 4K pubs. And I was like, dude, you do realize that you're 5,009 MMR, and you get that kind of mentality all the time. But within ranges, MMR is a decent system, and solo MMR is, the best gauge of skill we have currently. And as far as any other game is concerned, I agree.
So that's why it's kind of frustrating to me when like you might get that same party mentality in the game, and not just mentality. I mean, when you explain solo MMR, it sounds pure and simple, and that it simply works like a chess elo or something like that. It's a number that accurately conveys skill, and I would agree. But sometimes you don't have like 2 guys on the other chessboard. Like maybe you could, like if you're playing online chess, but I just mean like typically you're not going to put that solo type mentality into a game where it's a team game, because like you're in a party naturally all the time in Dota. It's always a 5v5. And so that solo mentality, somewhat might argue, would not lend itself to that system being wholly effective. Although, as you explain it, to you it is. And it may indeed be my negativity bias because, I mean, you're happy with your MMR. I'm not happy with mine, really. It's something I look at and I'm like, wow, I put a lot of time into this game and I'm really bad still. And when I see that, it might be something that motivates me down the line to find a new game when it comes out that feels like I better use my time, or that I can, I don't know, have more of a control or consistent control on the general outcome.
I guess.
And I don't mind if I lose games if I learn something. What I do mind is it like being 35-2 at like 20 minutes because a guy just decided to walk down mid and get hit in the face of the tower, feeding couriers and yelling at everybody.
I guess. I've always taken, whenever I've felt that my MMR is low, I've always taken that as like a sign that, oh, I should be higher MMR, I should just go play. And that's every time I climb MMR, that's how it feels. Right? Like for the longest time I never played ranked because I thought like who cares? Like I was just playing Dota for fun until like I had a friend that I knew I was better than, and he was like 3,500, and I was like, just to prove a point, I was like, I'm just going to calibrate. I calibrated at like 38, and that was just motivation because it was like, I know I'm better than this person that I play with, and he's 3,500. So I then had the motivation to say, I'm going to play solo queue. And then it was 38, and then eventually I went back to playing unranked because I didn't care, and then I was like, all right, well, I see these 4K people all the time, and I feel like I play just as well as them or better. And so then I went back to solo MMR, and I climbed another few hundred points. And yeah, it was hard, and yeah, obviously it's not like you suddenly have an 80% win rate and climb all the way there. But I've always taken that as motivation, right? So if I'm in 2,500 MMR, let's say, and I play with 3K people, and I think, hey, I'm consistently better than these people, just go play. Like, it may hurt and it may take a while, but if you are going to improve, it may take a while. It may take if you maintain a 60% win rate, it's still going to be a lot of games, and 60% is a high win rate. But that's always been my mentality with MMR, at least. Is like, I see people that are better, that are higher more than me playing, and I feel as though I'm better than them or a similar skill level. That means, logically speaking, that I should be able to climb to their MMR. Not necessarily in a super quick manner, but that logic still stands, and that's always been my mentality. So I've always found MMR to be motivating. But
is it possible that you could just get more trolls than others? Isn't it if there's that random chance, is it possible? And I mean, I know there's been some discussion about a shadow ban type system or something wherein players that were constantly in trouble,
low pool,
go into a hive of scum and villainy to play out their games, and that's always a possibility as well. It feels like a lot of people of that mentality never want to accept that they can be part of that problem, and I certainly have been in the past. I mean, I've served my time in the low prio, but I was always wondering about a shadow ban pool and like what the threshold is to get that, and if you can ever work your way out. And I started thinking about the report tier system, and wondered if maybe that's how, that when you're in the higher report ranges, you go to a different queue and you're shadow banned, but then once you bring the report numbers down, you're capable of going back into general pop or something. I don't know. This is all just theory crafting, but I mean, Valve obviously has put things in place to try to weed those people out. The report system, I mean, it works as it's intended to monitor such a vast amount of players, but it leaves something to be desired. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel fair that a stranger can waste an hour of my life and I can just throw one report at them, but I guess I suppose it's cathartic in its own way. Flubb, what do you think? Has Ursi convinced you at all towards like his purist mindset? I mean, you both kind of have convinced me of different things, to be honest.
Well, there's like I understand Ursi's point, because I truly think that MMR is a good measurement of what we have, but I'm saying that there's something that you could do better. I think that solo, for what it is designed around right now, solo is the only thing that matters. And I think that system shouldn't exist. If there's party MMR and there's team MMR and like it truly doesn't mean anything, then I don't really see why I'm playing it anymore. The only reason why I play party MMR is that people who are maybe like not incredibly dumb, that like just want to like do like, really silly things like Meepo support or something. And like, yeah, I do silly stuff like sniper support and things like that. And but the thing is like, I take the game seriously, and there's like certain, like there's like a level of seriousness that you want like higher than the lowest form. But I guess that's, in my opinion, that feels like a waste of allocation, like of like importance. And why do we have this system set up that's been around for a while and it hasn't really changed that drastically, like you guys were saying? And I feel like that's a thing that's wrong about it, is that they're not really taking any steps. They like tried to please for like so long. Then they like threw something up and they're like, oh, okay, well, this is going to be how it is. And then we're going to let the players decide what's important. And when the players decide what's important, it can be nice to have. But if you look at it as a whole, if players are deciding what's important, then you kind of lose what's pieces of the game, and only certain things get played because of it. Whereas I feel like party should be something that is played, and I think that one of the things that Ursi was saying was that there's like guys that are 6K that we go against a lot, like Hakuna Murano. Whenever we queue up for practice, it's almost every game that we get like a 6 player on the other side. I feel like, and I've felt that sting, and I think I've like been on record on VODs and stuff being like, this is ridiculous that every game we're facing a 6K. And I feel like there should be some way to like where we don't have to face that guy. Like if we're queuing up, we shouldn't have to face 6K every time. And the only reason why we face 6Ks is because no one takes it seriously, and the 6K player doesn't take it seriously, and he's just playing with his group of friends. So if there was more importance to it, that wouldn't happen to begin with.
Should you tighten up the gap there? Like, say if you could only play ranked party with people within 400 to 500 MMR.
Right, but the thing is, we'd have to redo it all over again. Like 400 to 500 is exactly
team MMR, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or team or
party MMR.
Or party. Either way.
It's party.
I'm talking more about party, but like, I mean, it's hard to make team work because team and party should kind of be the same thing. But I mean, that's kind of another discussion. But like, if you're going to party and you go like between 500 MMR. There should be like a new system that comes out, and then you can like kind of like recalibrate in a party manner, because obviously there'd be a lot of teams that couldn't work in that situation. Even like probably like some people in pros that couldn't like play together, where there'd be like some that don't play MMR enough and other ones that play all the time. And you'd have to like kind of redo the whole party system based on that, and I would be fine with that, because it doesn't mean anything, right? Like no one cares about it. So if we switch up the system and make it a new style, maybe we will start caring about it more. Maybe it will actually mean something if we have it a difference of 500 MMR instead of 2,000 MMR.
Yeah, I think you raise a good point regarding party MMR, and I agree. And I would be very interested in a system where party MMR takes into account solo MMR relative to the queue, right? So let's say that 6K player has 4K party MMR and 6K solo MMR. Not necessarily saying exactly, but let's say he gets average of 5K, so it just lists him as 5K within like the MMR system. And my core issue is just solo MMR should be left solo MMR. Solo should not be affected by party. Party can be affected by solo maybe, but that's the extent that I would be able to, that I would allow. I think when it gets down to your, you made the point that the system hasn't changed despite it having existed for years and years. I think that's a testament to how simple and effective the system is, right? There is no system I prefer. I like, while there are, occasionally you'll have a winning streak, or occasionally you'll have a losing streak, or occasionally you run into something that's ruining your games. Overall, the very, brusque simplicity of a system where every game, at the end of the game, you're going to be going up or down 25 points, plus or minus 1 or 2. With the exception of Party MMR, where sometimes you get games where it's like, plus or minus 37 or whatever, or rather plus 37, minus 13. But I like simple, all right? I like knowing at the end of a game, I'm going to be gaining approximately 25 MMR. And I like knowing that at the end of a game, I'm going to be losing 25 MMR solo. When it comes to party, I do agree with you that the system could be altered in a minor fashion, whether they change it to, you can only queue with people like 1,500, let's say, or 1,000 MMR away from you. 2,000 is definitely too much. It's way too abusable. But, it's a system that, like Flubb said, it's not meant to be taken seriously because it is so abusable. And that's the gist of it. I think I'm done. I'm sure I've reiterated things. And I know, kind listener, many people are going to be mad that I don't like Party MMR, because everybody that values their Party MMR always gets up in arms. But I'm sorry. Anyway, that's the end of my opinions.
I value my Party MMR. It's way higher than my solo.
Well, I mean, everybody...
3K.
Everybody always values whatever that is higher, right?
But, and that's why you value solo.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would feel dirty if I valued party because my party was 5K. I mean, I could get 5K party. Honestly, I like, not that I'm going to do this and invest hundreds of hours into this experiment, but Flub or I could easily get to 5K party more if we just abuse the system. I stand by that. Like,
But what if
easily.
you don't?
What do you mean, what if I don't?
Is the system good if you don't abuse it? The party system.
No, like the system. I mean, if we assume that everybody takes this not seriously, the end gains that you get from abusing it are relatively minimal. But it's still, since it's not taken seriously, I feel like you can abuse it for the pure numerical purpose. But there's really just little to no gains from that. But I would easily stand to say that if we wanted to, like if us five as a Hakuna Marana who play well together as a team, we cannot climb in any expedient manner because of all the people that have these like 6Ks and stuff that are just like pretty much unwinnable games. Like occasionally we win, but we are disadvantaged from the start. Whereas we could easily just have each five of us independently go stack with a bunch of 22Ks or 2500s or 3Ks and just go mid every game and play TA or Timbersaw or whatever, just dominate every game and just climb to 5K like that. Like that's totally doable. And I think a system that encourages that and allows that stuff to happen is fundamentally flawed. And that's why we don't take it seriously, right? And that's why these flaws get promulgated, to use a way too elaborate word.
All right. I just wanted to know if you thought the system worked.
All right, Flub.
Despite that. But makes sense to me.
Well, to answer your question earlier, because I kind of like sidestepped it, Wazoo. Yeah, Ursi does bring up good points. And there are reasons why I believe that solo is the way that it is right now. And I mean, you don't see me right now worrying about party as a Dota 2 player, like, and I haven't been for years because no one cares about it. And like, if I was going to try to like impress someone, or if I was looking for a team, I never ever told them, "Hey, my party MMR is this." Mm-hmm. They would be like, "Okay, well, cool. You have some good friends. Can we meet them?" And that would be the general complaint, right? But if we change the system on how it works, and personally, I'm not a believer of it. If something has stood the test of time, it is not good, because change isn't always better, but like progress is always has to do a little bit with change. And like Dota itself is always trying to be a perfectionist. It's always trying to get the heroes balanced as much as possible. With every patch that comes out, there's a new direction that it takes. It says, okay, well, this is there's something wrong with this core fundamental of the game, or there's something wrong with this core fundamental of this hero. And it in the past like year or two, it's really narrowing down. Like, yeah, they've changed like some of the way the core aspects of the game goes, and
ranked. They added banning.
Right, and ranked, exactly. They've done certain things that have really evened the playing field and done really good things that I think have made the game stronger in general. And you look at heroes, and heroes aren't like drastically changed as much anymore, unless they're like coming up with a new hero concept because the hero doesn't generally fit the theme of where the game is anymore, like Ricky and stuff, or Bloodseeker and things like that. Mm-hmm. But if you look at like heroes in general, whenever they're nerfing them, they nerf them very slightly in a numbers way, instead of like, if you go back like 3-4 years ago, like go back to Dota 1, man, you see those changes. They are massive changes, like 6% off of I don't know, like 10% off of damage for a spell at every level, or like taking down. I remember like Lena's dragons, like not even Dragon Slave, her lance, doing like, oh man, it was like 500 at one point in Dota, and it like went down to like, I don't know, something dumb like 350 or something crazy like that, and it's always about the perfection, and I just always want to be striving for that. And I feel like for how good that game does it, for how good Dota does that aspect, I feel like it's lacking in this one area, and I don't like blame them as like this is a bad system. They should have fixed this years ago. It's like we're always trying to figure out what to do better. We should just continue to do that in this area as well.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, again, well, I'd fall back, but those are your closing remarks. I'm not gonna make an argument that you can't respond to as much as I may want to. All right, so
closing remarks are these: I'm gonna pay to get a booster, so contact me at DotP_Wazoo. I don't know what I can pay you. I'll give you tons of respect, but just hop on, boost my account up.
I mean, if you want to boost party MMR, you could just get your co-host to do it with you. You guys could both be like 700 MMR richer by the end of the week.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially if Flubb's now a mid player. You could take full advantage.
How about you boost Areno us, bub?
I have morals, so I won't do that.
Yeah, we'll see. Every man has his price, dude.
Yeah.
We'll look at your contract down the line 5 years from now, and it'll be stipulation.
Honestly, yeah.
You have to boost me to 5K.
I've done it. I've done it incidentally in parties where like I just join a party and I assume we're playing unranked, and then we're playing ranked, and the average of the game is 3K, and I'm like, okay, well, all right, okay, and then I just play like whatever mid I choose, and I just win the whole game.
I think the idea here for me that I can take away is I think leagues would be a good idea, just so we can kind of have some type of variation and different seasons and stuff, so you can have that distinction. I like that Overwatch does that it closes down the season and then opens up again, because it gives you time to prepare in solo, or not solo, but like other environments, and then come back at it twice as hard and not feel discouraged because your number's so low. Yeah. Secondarily, I agree with Jersey. I really do. I think your idea of MMR is a good one, but you played a lot of Dota, so I don't see the value in the system for me as I'm growing as a player. And when you were probably around my skill level, you were probably playing tons of unranked. So I mean, it depends. You have to develop in an environment that's not going to make you feel bad for your progress with that number, because sometimes you're a better 2K this time around than you were the last time around, and you just learned or gotten inflated MMR through heroes or whatever. So I don't know. That's a pretty good discussion to wrap her up. I definitely agree with both of you guys in ways, and both your mindsets definitely both have validity.
It's a work in progress for sure. I think there are pros and cons to each thing. But I mean, I think there's a good reason why in Dota we've had the system for a long time, and people still they say, all right, what's your solo MMR, right? They don't care about other things, and Dota is a very serious game, and that is a serious way that people judge skill, right? It's not like I think we see this in a lot of other games where they have rank systems that are new and trendy and whatever, and they have all these complicated little things, and people just ignore it. Or people are like, I don't like the system. I don't like, yada, yada, yada. Like the Overwatch system that significantly disadvantaged supports, stuff like that. I also think, to Wazoo's credit, or not to his credit, but to expound upon his point, one of the big things that I find with people that they misunderstand is the Dota populace is getting better over time, right? So 2,500 MMR now is far, far, far better than 2,500 MMR 3 years ago, or 1 year ago, or 2 years ago. Yeah. So if you are staying at the same MMR, whether it's 2,500 or 4,000 or 5,000, that does not mean that you are not getting better at the game. It just means you are getting better at the game at a similar progress to the general public.
That's a good point.
Right. It's a very important thing to understand, and it's something that I feel like a lot of people, they may intuitively know that. Like if you say it to them, they're like, oh yes, that makes sense. But a lot of people, they think bad about themselves because they're like, oh man, I've stayed at this MMR even though I've gotten better. Like, yeah, you've gotten better, but so has everybody else that's at whatever X MMR.
Yep, that's a very good point.
All right.
I haven't thought about that much, because you look at it as like a barometer of skill or failure, and if that graph has stayed the same, you feel like you plateaued. But that's a very good point.
All right. Flubb, any last few sentences before I close this out officially?
Basically, me and Ursi are yin and yang. We are completely two different people.
Yes.
But we respect each other enough that at the end of the day, we're all friends. And
I'm the line that runs down the middle.
Wazoo is there to facilitate both of us. He's he's like the little circles in the yin and the yang.
I'm all the lines pretty much. I make up the shape.
I'm just one of us is black, one of us is white, and then Wazoo's all the little barriers keeping us in the lines.
Keeping you in line. metaphorically and physically.
That's fair. Well, Flubb and I are very, very different Dota players, Dota personalities, Dota theory crafters.
I'm very
Dota.
different as well, but just different bad.
Well, it's all about different shades of different, right?
I think you're a very good theory crafter, man. I just think that
5K in theory crafting, would you say?
Truthfully, like, I know you do have a lot of experience, man, but it's almost a drop in the hat compared to like how many hours I've spent on Han and Dota 2. It's like you're getting so discouraged about certain things, and that's what I kind of want to tell viewers is like, yeah, it can feel discouraging when your friends are higher than you, or show hosts or whatever, but think of it like it takes time, and you're like building a lot of personality, and because you guys listen to players or listen to ideas, you're going to be way more open and better to growing than any other person out on the market. Like,
so keep tuning into the show because you'll probably go up like 50 MMR an episode. Tune into every single one. Go download all our back catalog. That'll each one you download probably 50 MMR. So
exactly. Yeah. And it is all about like, spending time that is dedicated to getting better, right? It's not about just playing games randomly. Like that may be fun, do whatever. But if you are saying I want to improve, don't just queue up for a game and do whatever. Like maybe queue up for a game and say I'm going to work on X, or go watch a stream or watch a replay
or play Omni Night.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because there's a difference between playing Dota and getting better, right? Because you can get better in a variety of ways, like through listening to a content like ours or watching replays or whatever. So, there's a common misconception. You can have 3,000 games of Dota and still be at the same MMR you were when you had 2,000 games of Dota, right? So,
what are you saying to me?
I'm done. Some of us are just
Sorry
making
basic secure towards the end of the cast, but
I don't have to host a Tuesday show with you, so like I can offend you all I want, and then like you guys can go and do your own thing. All right. So on that note, I'm going to close this out and make do the plugs. We have a Twitch channel, twitch.tv/.ptv. That is where we are streaming. I'm streaming. Proud is streaming. Roland's streaming. We have the in-houses 9 p.m. Eastern on Wednesdays. They're a lot of fun. You should show up. We also have a Discord channel. That's where we do all our stuff for that. That's discord.com/gg/.p, I believe. If not, it is in the defenseofthepatients.com website /ladder is where you can find that, as well as the ladder for the in-house system. On our website, you can also find our Amazon banner. You can click through that. Costs you no extra money. Gives us a little bit. We appreciate that. If you'd like to support us, you can also find us on Patreon, patreon.com/defenseofthepatients, or on iTunes if you would like to help us in a non-monetary way. That is just as appreciated. We also have an email, defenseofthepatients@gmail.com. If you're sensing a theme here, I can imagine you are. That's where
the show's called Defense of the Patients, if you didn't know.
Yeah. It's not actually just .p. It is Defense of the Patients. You can send us feedback there, questions for the show. We'd like to discuss things. So if you have stuff you'd like your friendly roundtable to discuss, whether it's 3 people or 4 people or 2 people or 5 people, we will discuss them. So send us your info there. On Twitter, I'm at Ursinity. Flubb's at FlubbDodo with 2 B's. Wazoo is at .p_Wazoo. And the show is at .p_show. We also have a Reddit, reddit.com/r/defense of the patients. And I believe, we also have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/.ptv1. That's a numeric 1. On there, we have our replay reviews that Fafnir is doing. We also have all the shows uploaded if you prefer to listen to it through YouTube for some reason. And occasional other random stuff that we like to put out. I know I have a whole set of videos with varying degrees of randomness to them.
Big shout out to Fafnir, because those are really well done.
He's
shout out to our sound engineer, Tom Juice, as well.
Tom Juice. I like that we're making that his official name, as though like his last name is really Juice, because that's like a whole next.
I was going to call him Tommy Tom the Juicy Fruit, but I was like, decided not.
Yeah, I was going to say don't scare him away, please. Yeah. He helps us so much. Anyway, that's it. That's it for me, and that's it for all of us. I don't think this show has an end tagline, so I'm just going to say
boom shakalaka.
Boom shakalaka. Stay juicy.